Oh, hello again everyone, welcome back, and here I am at the Fleet Air Arm Museum once again, and I'm now sat in the cockpit of the KD431 Corsair. I can't quite believe that I am, to be perfectly honest with you, so I've placed some light on the matter and you can see what's going on here, and we can look all the way back through to all of this, and I'm going to take you through one or two of the salient points here, but I'm going to start on the starboard side and take a look at some of these things. I'm actually sat on a shackle, would you believe, but I'm not going to make too much of a fuss about that, and I won't talk in a high voice either, so there we go. So some of the things I do know about, some of the things I don't know about. So we'll start on the starboard side at the back, and what we can see is the arrestor hook lever here for putting the arrestor hook down and up, and that would be actually done by the pilot's right hand. So that would be, you'd have to take his left hand off the throttle, which is over there, place that onto the stick, which is here, and then move his right hand to that, and then change that to configuration there. We have oxygen regulators down here that you can see. We'll just zero forwards down onto that, as you can see there. And as we move forward, we have switches and fuses for lights, for fuel pumps, for pitot heating and defrost, and then we move forward to instrument panel lights and so on, and magneto switches here, I think those are, and then we have radio switches and so on and so forth. I'm not quite sure what this is, but it's covered in I think that might be the starter actually, and we also then have the cowl flap lever here as well. So I'm slightly lower down here than you might anticipate, because normally if I was in this aircraft I'd be sat on a parachute, which would bring me up a little bit higher. But if I ease myself back up and out, you can see the first thing that would strike a pilot of an aircraft like this is just exactly how long the nose is, and it's enormous. Now, perhaps you could imagine, if you will, trying to land on an aircraft carrier, which is roughly the equivalent of trying to park on a postage stamp, in an aircraft like this going at approximately 100 miles an hour. You'd have a bit of a job, I think. It's really important to understand exactly what the pilots had to go through when they were actually landing these aircraft, and they didn't land them straight on, as you can see it from here. What they would in fact be doing is they would be looking out of the left here, and they would perform a curved approach towards the aircraft carrier, and on the port side, as they looked at it of the rear of the aircraft carrier, there would be a character called the batsman. In America you might call him the LSO, the landing signal officer, I think, and he would be signalling with his bats to tell the pilot whether he needed to be higher or lower by signalling with his hands. And then when he wanted the aircraft to be dropped onto the deck and pick up the arrestor wires, he would crouch down and cross the bats over, and that would be, right, drop it on the deck now. So this would be the way that the aircraft would be landed, and it's a technique, I believe, that was perfected by the Fleet Air Arm, and they're very, very skilled pilots. So let's go back inside again, and you can now begin to see the controls here. We have, starting on the starboard side down here, we have a three-way control. That's an original control there. We have a fuel gauge, we have an oil, I think that's oil pressure. Oh yes, this is fuel pressure and oil pressure, and then we have oil temperature here. We then have cylinder temperature at the heads. We have, I don't quite know what that is. Oh, that's a clock, in fact. Normally the clocks are on the other side in some of the other aircraft. We have artificial horizon, rate of climb and descent, turn and slip indicator. In America they call that turn and bank. That's a gyro no, is that a gyro compass? That is a, I think they call it a wet compass, and that's a gyro compass there. We then have airspeed indicator here, and then we have manifold pressure and an altimeter there, and then engine RPM. So if we look there, we have a flight lock for the droppable tank. So this aircraft did have a droppable fuel tank. And then we have the flap control here, which you can see This is set at up, although you can see that the flaps are in fact down, and we have set between 0 and 50 degrees of flap down. Moving further down here, we can now see the, let's move the stick to central a minute, and I'll hold that with my knee. Of the landing gear indicators, we can see that they're down, and very relieved I am that they are. And moving further on, we have the undercarriage up and down lever here. So as you can see, there's a U shape here. The reason for this is that the undercarriage also doubled as a dive brake. So you could move the undercarriage into the up position, and you could then move it across into the section where it says dive, and then you could move it to on, and that would deploy the front undercarriage but would not deploy the rear undercarriage. So there we go on that one. Now, interestingly, for some additional detail for you modelers out there, the throttle quadrant is sighted here, and it is quite literally more or less immediately above the aileron trim control, but slightly in front of it, as you can see. There are actuating levers here which come from the bottom of the throttle quadrant, which will not be included in most models that I've seen, so you might want to make these out of wire there. That's quite interesting. And also the throttle handle here, which you can, it's grabbable, it's right there in front of you, so we'd have to look at the pilot's notes to find out what this little button does. I'm not going to press it because I don't want things to fall off. So there we are. So if the throttle control here, with it close this end and open this end, there's a propeller pitch control, and then an RPM control, no, not RPM control, I can't remember what the other one is. We'd have to again look at the pilot's notes here. So moving further on, down here is the control for the fuel cocks. If you're using an external fuel tank on an aircraft like the Corsair, because the external fuel tanks don't have a fuel gauge, you would want to pump the fuel into the fuel tank, which is just in front of the pilot's enclosure here, the cockpit, so that you can use the fuel gauge in the cockpit. If the pump failed for whatever reason, and these things do fail, then you can run the aircraft directly from the fuel tank, from the external fuel tank, but you don't know how much you've got left, so you have to start being careful there. But that is the control knob there. So you have 3 axis trim control here. So this is the aileron trim here. You've then got the elevator trim here, and sorry, it's a rudder trim there, I beg your pardon. And then you've got the rudder trim here, so that rudder trim wheel moves backwards and forwards there. Moving further on here, coloured red here, we've got the tail wheel unlock and lock button here, and then we've got the wing folding lever here, which is in the stopped position there at this moment in time. So as you can see, there's quite a lot to look at here. I'm not sure what this handle is here, but I'm pretty sure it's not the handbrake, because I don't think this aircraft has such a thing. Looking further down into the aircraft here, what you can also see right at the bottom there is that there's no floor to this aircraft, but you have panels on which you can put your feet. You can see that there. You can see my clodhoppers there, looking there, and you can see the control column there. On the F4U1D models, you'll see that there's a window. You're going to need to close that up when you make your model, because the Fleet Air Arm Corsair doesn't contain that. And again, you can see that the cockpit green is the mix of the zinc chromate yellow and green that you will all know and presumably love. There you are. But there we go. So this is the cockpit of a Corsair, and quite fantastic it is too. And with that being said, I'm going to just give you a little look around now and have a quick look at some the rest of this that you can see here, and up to the top here. So you've got bomb arming switches there and bomb release switches. You've also got armament for the machine guns and so on. So you have things that you can model onto the coaming here. Defrost levers there that you can see. So we'll give you a quick look up at the top there. I've modelled some of this sort of stuff into the screen. You can also see, and the Tamiya models include this. This is the bulletproof screen here, very solid, and so there we are. So, folks, after scarcely 10 minutes, you would have thought I'd be able to talk for longer about this, but I can't and won't. I'm going to say thank you very much. I hope you found this interesting. I certainly did. It certainly informed my own work. But before I do go, I want to say once again that you should take a good look at the book by Dave Morris, Corsair KD431. It's available in all good shops, and it's not expensive either. Buy the second edition, the late one, because it contains some further information about the aircraft that has come to light since the first book was written. Please go out and buy that book and take a look at it. It'll be a most excellent research aid, invaluable to you. And I want to thank as well at this point Dave Morris, the team at the Fleet Air Arm Museum, and everybody who was involved in getting me to be able to sit in the cockpit of KD431, which is a unique, or one of many actually, unique things here at the Fleet Air Arm Museum. For goodness sake, if you can, go visit this place. Give it a chance to go and see what you can here, because you'll discover a lot of things that aren't available to see anywhere else in the world. It's a fabulous place. If you like aircraft, then this is a place to come. And if you don't know anything about the Fleet Air Arm, this is probably the best place to learn, because I can tell you this, Dave Morris has forgotten more about this aeroplane than I will ever know. And whilst you may not get to speak to him like I have done today, the sort of people who work in this place know and understand an awful lot about these aircraft. So I strongly urge you to do that. And I'm going to close today by saying thank you very much to the Fleet Air Arm Museum for their time. I'm delighted to have been given the opportunity to do this today. I'll say thanks very much for tuning in once again, and Zinzan out. Cheers for now.